Okay, hello there, I'm Dennis. Welcome to the channel. This week I've been working in OpenSUSE. OpenSUSE has been around a long time. It's one of the first actual Linux distributions. Best I can tell, the first release actually was in October of 2005. So that's quite a while. It's quite a track record. And I've been living it. I've installed it on this machine, the MT7010. So I thought I would share that, but first of all, I've looked at a lot of OpenSUSE videos on YouTube, and there reaches a point where they leave out, including myself. I went back and watched mine. It was 2 years ago, and I skipped right over it myself. So what I thought I would do was cover OpenSUSE in two stages. First stage, let's go over the installation of OpenSUSE, and we'll go over it in as much detail as we can. Now, I recorded the installation twice. The first time I installed it on that SUSE laptop, and I screencasted that, captured that. And so that was on real hardware. And then there was some things that, like for instance, in the very beginning, when you're booting up, you'll get this progress bar, actually three of them, green progress bars. Well, that don't show up on the screencast. So the only way I could get that was to install it and record it in a virtual box. So I've installed it in a virtual box, and I've installed it also on hardware, and both installations were exactly the same. There was no differences whatsoever between real hardware and a virtual machine. Now, how it reacts to the hardware, that might be a different story. I don't know. But anyway, let's go over the part one. We'll go over the uh, installation, and then I'll have by the time that post, I'll have about a week or so in OpenSUSE and making it work for me. And at that point, after the installation video, we'll do a what I've learned video. Explore OpenSUSE with me. So let's get started with that. Okay, so this is my OpenSUSE Tumbleweed Optiplex 7010 right now. I installed it in a virtual box, like I said, and this is it right here. There is absolutely no difference. I did screen capture the install on the ASUS laptop, and there was absolutely no difference. I will say this, if you don't have an internet connection, it's going to give you a problem after you reboot. If you do have an internet connection and it receives it, regardless of the net installer or the full DVD installer, it's going to utilize that, and in the end, it'll work, and your network manager will be up and running. So let me get this going here. Make it a little bigger. This is set up in a virtual box. Now this video is assuming that you knew how to download the ISO and put it on either a DVD or USB, whatever the media, you knew how to do that, and you've booted your system up to that. And your first option here will be boot from hard disk, meaning that if you say had burned it to a USB drive, forgot it was in your system, powered down, rebooted, and your system's BIOS told it to boot from the USB first, then in that case you might get this screen. And if you do, you can just hit boot from hard disk and it'll start your system. The next one is installation, so you can go ahead and start the installation. Upgrade. Now, I don't know about the sense that makes, because this is Tumbleweed, which is a rolling release, which upgrades possibly daily. I mean, it's done a lot of updates since just a few days I've been running it. Like Arch, it updates every day. So that might be there more for the Leap rather than the Tumbleweed. But if we go down to the more, click on that, it's going to say Rescue System, Boot Linux System. Again, the system that's already installed. Check the installation media. Now that's great right there. I think that should be actually on the first screen, but it's not. rescue system, if you're running time shift, which is going to set up during the install, unless you turn it off, you'll be able to rescue your system. So let me start that back up. And we're going to go with installation. And you're going to get a lot of text come out on your screen there. I made that full screen to get rid of the brightness so bad. During the screen capture, see, I wasn't able to catch this progress bars going across here. It says hardware detection, so it's looking at your system and diagnosing what it has and what it's going to need. I'm going to fast forward that. Okay. So it's detecting the network devices. Again, if it's all possible, go to Ethernet during your installation, and it'll make it quicker and you won't have to worry about setting it up. If it's just Wi-Fi and it does pick up the dongle, you'll have the opportunity to add your IP address. So this is where the actual install would have picked up. I'm going to test the keyboard. And that's the Octathorpe. Now you can read through this, EULA, if you like, but it's fairly harmless. It's saying basically use it at your own risk, do what you want to it, but don't infringe on what we're doing. Okay, so next. Probing the hard disk. Now it's asking about the online repositories. So we're going to click yes, and it's going to list the repositories that are available, the ones that are going to be installed by default. And I did not change anything. I left it as default. It said main repositories for expert users. And I'm not sure, see down at the bottom there, it said for experts only, right here. So the source package is another repository, but unless I need it, there was no reason to do that. Now, obviously, if you think you need that, then, or if you just want to experiment, go ahead. So it's adding those repositories, the non-OS open source software, and the open source software, along with the main update repository. And I'll add to those eventually, and the next video will show that. Now, obviously, I'm going to select the desktop with Xfce desktop, but you do have options here. You have the Plasma or KDE Plasma. You got GNOME, the generic desktop with graphical system it's a graphical system with reduced package set intended as base for a customized software selection. That could be very interesting. Server, if you're setting up a server in your house or on the web, wherever. Transactional server, that's like the server role, but uses a read-only root file system to provide automatic updates of a system without interfering with the running system. So it's an immutable root system, I'm assuming. So I'm going to click next here. Okay, now this is where I've disagreed with both setups, actually with the 3 setups, because the third one would have been on this machine I'm using right now. Here's the part I don't like. Create partition for swap 2 gigabytes. It tried to set it up for 2 gigabytes on the laptop, and it tried to do it on this MT7010. So I'm gonna manually partition there. Now, if you're just experimenting in a virtual box, that would be fine, probably just to check it out. This is a virtual box, so the whole thing is only 69 gigs or something. Let's get going here. I'm going to say expert partitioner using the current proposed. Again, you can see what it's going to do. Well, I'm going to delete all of that, including the EFI, which may not be completely necessary, but I did it. And that swap, I'm going to delete that. That'll be the first one. SDA2, I'm going to delete that. And SDA1, I'm going to go ahead and delete, just so everything is set up new. So the first one, 512 capital M, not gigabytes, or megabytes. All right, click next. This is going to be the EFI boot partition. Here you can look at FS tab options. You change those if you like. You can encrypt the device. It's going to be option or formatted to FAT32, but apparently you can change that. So there's that, half a gig EFI system. This one here is going to be for my root drive, root partition. And we'll make that 25 gigabytes. Now, obviously, that changes on my system here. It's a bigger hard drive. Again, you can edit your FS tab options if you want. You can change the file system altogether if you want. It defaults to Btrfs, B-tree-FS, which I decided to leave that. Now, here's where you enable those snapshots as well. That way, you've seen at the very beginning when you booted into the system, it had rescue system. So by enabling snapshots, you've already got one created. So if something didn't happen, you can just roll it right back. I'll go back to that partition. Now we're going to make a swap partition. And I made this 8 gigabytes, but on a laptop, you'd want more than that. 1.5 is the rule of thumb, I think. Now we're going to apply the remainder of this to the home partition, data and ISB applications. It's going to format it to XFS. You can change that here if you'd like. There's some more options. Mount it at different parts of the disk. All right, there's our final layout right there. SDA1, SDA2 is root, SDA3 is swap, SDA4 is home. Now, that's set up more like I want it. Now, you may not want yours busted up like that. That's up to you. That's what I'm saying. The only thing you really have to be real familiar with is partitioning, the partitioning scheme. Or you can just let it do it and accept what you get. Here's the time zone. You can also read through the release notes at any time during this installation. You got other settings here. You can set the clock manually, adjust the date manually, if for some reason it was wrong. Now it's checking the network time protocol, and we're good to go. Now we're going to add a user. This would be your username. Then a password. Repeat the password. Now, if you'll notice, that automatic login was ticked by default. And I'm not sure, I don't mind to use this password for the system administrator, but the automatic login thing should be an opt-in, not a, it's going to do it whether you opt, you may not even see this. All right, and you could skip the user creation at this point, but I didn't. It's asking me about my password. It's too little. Now here is the place where a lot of people do not cover what your options are here. Most people just say, okay, this is the default, it's great. Click install. Well, you shouldn't do that. So let's look at this. So your first option there up there is the bootloader type, and it's wanting to, by default, it's going to use grub 2, which is an updated grub. It's right here, see grub 2, not with a space. And here's a link that I got this information right here. So as the computer starts, grub 2 either presents a menu and awaits user input, which is what it did for us, and it automatically transfers control to an operating system kernel. So that's basically what grub does. Now you could change that. You cannot change that here. If you'll see, see how that says disable the green portions? You can click on anything that's green, but you can't click on that. So it's going to use grub 2 regardless, I believe. Now, if you click on booting right here, you may have a different option. I didn't check that. I could have, I should have. So the first one is grub. The next one is secure boot. You could disable it, but it's actually enabled. Secure boot. Here's the link where I got that. Secure boot is a security standard developed by members of the PC computer industry to help make sure that a device boots using only software that is trusted by the original equipment manufacturer, OEM. When the PC starts, the firmware is checked, and it'll check everything, and if it's not kosher or copacetic, it won't boot. All right, update NVRAM is enabled. All right. What we got here for NVRAM? Here's the link as well. Short for non-volatile random access memory. Non-volatile random access memory, NVRAM, is a memory that saves its stored data regardless if the power is on or off. Today, a good example of NVRAM is a flash memory like that used in a jump drive. NVRAM is also in your computer monitor, printers, cars, smart cars, and other devices that require remembered settings. So NVRAM is probably in my toaster. All right, let's see. I skipped software because we're going to look at that. Now you notice this next one says software. And here's a list of the base utilities or the stuff that's going to install with the selected desktop. This may change if you selected a different desktop. It probably will. Window Manager, etc. So I'm going to continue on with the video here. I'm going to click on the software right there where it says green, where it's green. And that opens up all of this optional software. Now, I don't know if you can install separate desktops, different desktops, but the option is here. I didn't click one to see if it would untick Xfce or not. I could have. Now, every time I've installed OpenSUSE, I have selected the games there and have yet to find out what games it is. There's definitely not a man games or games help. So you got a lot of stuff in here that you can select, and one of them for me was miscellaneous proprietary software that's not under open source license. It's not in the installer per se, but the option is there to go ahead and get that stuff going. If you're using your computer for like video creation or whatever, you're going to need some codecs to get things going, streamers, etc. KVM, virtualization, and host. Virtualization holes into AppArmor. Now that comes in by default. Now I've covered AppArmor. Oh, I did. Yeah, right here. It's enabled by default. AppArmor is a Linux kernel security module that allows the system administrator to restrict programs' capabilities with per program profiles. Profiles can allow capabilities like network access, raw socket access, and the permission to read, write, or execute files on matching paths that come out of the Wikipedia. Here's the AppArmor homepage. All right. Security Enhanced Linux, you may want that. See, that's an option there that you may want. If you want a really tied down system, that's probably something you'd want. That's specifically for laptop computers. And when I installed it on the ASUS, I did select that. Some of this stuff is checked, and that's some good stuff is checked. But you may want to add some stuff like the extra documentation there. And again, it could be like the games. It's just never, at least I hadn't found them. They're not command line games. And so there's just a lot of things in here that could be useful. So when you're through, click OK and it'll update it. Now you can see stuff in here like games that I selected of miscellaneous proprietary packages. Default system D target. Now you can change it to a text mode or it's in graphical mode. And I didn't do that. I might do it later on just to see. If you click on hardware detection now, it's going to show you everything that it picks up. Now this is in a VM. And so this would be different. Disk is a VBox. This would be definitely different on a real hardware. So you might be interested if you had, especially if you had a graphics card, you wanted to find out what kind it was, or if you, like in this case, Ethernet right there. All right. Now, CPU mitigations. CPU mitigation. Here's the website from SUSE.com. Mitigation option has the following settings. So if you click on that, you can change it. All CPU side channel mitigations are disabled. If they're auto, it's on, enabled as they are detected based on the CPU type, and mitigations auto, no SMT, no signal, symmetric multi-threading of the CPU is disabled if necessary. And that's not an option that I would change, but who knows, you might would be. All right, so firewall, you'll notice, is enabled, and it uses firewall D. You can check that by running, if you run systemctl, you'll find systemctl status of your firewall D. It'll show you right here. A firewall is a network security device that monitors incoming and outgoing network traffic and decides whether to allow or block specific traffic based on the defined set of security rules. Firewalls have been the first line of defense in network security for over 25 years. Definitely had firewalls when I first started. Firewall can be hardware, software as a service, public, cloud, private, or virtual. All right. Next on the list, we got SSH. It's enabled by default. SSH is the Secure Shell Protocol, is a cryptographic network protocol for operating network services securely over an unsecured network. Its most notable applications are remote login, command line execution. SSH applications are based on a client-server architecture connecting an SSH client instance with the SSH server. Purpose: secure connection, remote access. That's from the Wikipedia. All right. SSH port. Now you can change the port. You can block the port. It's open. Without the port being open, SSH can't communicate. Major Linux security module, AppArmor. All right. Here's their webpage right here. I think I just covered that. AppArmor is a Linux. Yeah, I did when it was in the software category. All right, let's see. A major Linux policy kit default privileges are set at default. Policy kit. Here's the webpage. OpenSUSE webpage documentation. Polkit works by limiting specific actions by users, by group, or by name. It then defines how those users are allowed to perform this action. It's a policy kit. It does exactly what it says. Okay. That's that. Now, network configuration. Again, if you're online, in this case, it's picking up just like if it was on a Ethernet because it's a virtual box. But if you had to do some extra configuration, click the green right there, and it'll open it up, and you can adjust those things. Now, here's one that I didn't know about. Using Network Manager, you can disable the servers, but it says switch to Wicked. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Thought it was down here at the last. Guess not. Let's see. Can I go find? Yep, here we go. Switch to Wiki during install. OpenSUSE portal. I'll stop that. Wicked provides a new framework for network configuration and is a replacement for the IFUP family of scripts. The Wicked framework uses a client or server, and layered approach to the problem of network configuration. This allows Wicked to define standardized facilities for things like address configuration that are well integrated with the overall framework and are layered on top of a device-specific services. Interprocesses communication between the Wicked client and back-end services, such as the main Wicked daemon process, is carried out via dbus. So if you're familiar with that and you want to switch to it, there's a chance to do it. You probably can do that at any time, but during the install, this is the time. Hit play. I'm going to skip forward because I think the next one is going to be the install. Yep, I click next for install, and here's a final warning. It's going to wipe out your system, and install. Click on install if you're sure. And the install is on the way. Now again, this is in a VirtualBox. Get forward, go all the way to the end maybe. All right, so I paused the video a couple times, trying to get right here. I paused this a couple times, and I'll pause it now. No matter if you click stop, it's just this screen is not going to disappear. You really have no other option but to reboot that I'm aware of. You might could get into a terminal in some way. I'm not sure, maybe. But I clicked on stop and it just stayed right there. So eventually I clicked OK. Like I was going to say, right here it says 2116, but I paused the video a couple times during the install on the ASUS laptop and the VM that we're watching right here. And it was about 10 minutes more. So the whole process took about 30 minutes. And I'm going to click OK. It'll reboot by itself. You saw that timer right there. When it boots up, I'm going to power it off so I can get rid of the ISO. We'll start it up just to make sure it's going to work. I just logged in. And there we go. Press the keys. So that's going to do it for this video. That was the installation. I hope I cleared it up just a little bit. It made you aware, at least aware, that you got more options. I'll be back. Okay, so that's going to conclude this part 1, the installation of OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. And I gotta say, I really like it. Now I hope that I cleared up anything that questions you may have had on the installation. If you are a brand new to Linux user, you may not want to set up or install OpenSUSE unless you just want to try it. And I would recommend that you become familiar with partitioning. As you saw or will see, the partitioning scheme that they suggest wouldn't work for me, and it may not work for you. So I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope I cleared up the installation of OpenSUSE a little bit. And it's not that hard. It's really not that hard. The biggest thing you'll have to decide is how you want to partition your disk. So I'll be back with part 2 of actually living in OpenSUSE and seeing what I think about it. Thanks, guys. Peace out. Bye. Be kind to everybody.